Welcome to another Britflicks.com podcast. My name's Stuart Wright, and today's guest is writer-director Stelana Kliris. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Stuart. Thank you for having me.
My absolute pleasure. I guess cards on the table for the listener. We met each other on a writing program run by Athens Film Office called The Owl.
Back in 2022.
2022, yes. And in that time since we met, you've got a film.
That's
called Find Me Falling. Now, before we get into details about it, do you want to give the listener a brief synopsis of what Find Me Falling is all about?
Yes. Very basically, Find Me Falling is a romantic comedy about a rock star kind of towards the end of his career who's having a bit of a crisis, and he decides that he's going to leave everything behind and just go move to this island, the island of Cyprus, that he used to visit in his youth, where he fell in love for the first time, just to be alone and get away from people. And he buys this little isolated house on a cliff top. And as he moves in, he discovers that the cliff is a suicide hotspot.
Oh, wow.
And so now he's forced to deal with people. And this also brings about an old flame, and things develop from there. And it stars the absolutely lovely Harry Connick Jr. So we're thrilled.
We'll get onto that later. And then, and also then, how and when can people see the movie?
It's coming out on Netflix worldwide on the 19th of July.
Okay, now we're recording this on the 12th of June. So the first question is, how does that feel building up to a worldwide release?
Oh my God, completely surreal. I mean, coming from Cyprus and having made this little independent film, and then just going to the massive, machine of Netflix it's a dream come true. And just, I mean, I can share some of the little numbers that they've been running by us, but, you're hearing things every day like it's being translated into over 30 languages, and it's going to like 190 countries with over 260 million accounts. It's crazy, and just very, very exciting.
It is exciting. So let's get back to the bit that everyone can do if they want to try and make a movie, is they can write a script. Nobody can stop us doing that. So before this film was ready for Netflix, it was a kernel of an idea swimming around your head. So what was that got you going on what became Find Me Falling?
It was actually a newspaper article or a news article that I read about a similar spot in Australia, I think just outside Sydney. And there was a lovely man who lived near a suicide hotspot, except he was very kind and he actually saved a lot of lives. Every time somebody was near the edge, he would invite them in for tea, and so on. And I just, after reading the article, I thought to myself, what would happen if this was a misanthrope, if it was somebody who was kind of really miserable and, kind of disillusioned by life and didn't want to be around people? What does that mean? And just kind of the idea of how, connecting with people can, help to connect with yourself, or in saving others, we save ourselves. And obviously, because I have a very strong romantic inclination, I had to kind of throw a love story in there as well. So that's how it kind of happened.
So as you were identifying the character and deciding on doing the sort of romantic comedy as the genre, what do you remember being the sort of main storytelling challenges for you developing this screenplay?
Well, it was immediately a really great premise, like, and he was originally a writer. He eventually developed into a musician, into a rock star, but like this really grumpy writer at the edge of the cliff, I was picturing, like Jack Nicholson in his sort of heyday, kind of yelling at people on the cliff. But it was quite hard to develop from there because, yes, it's a great premise, but then you need to give it some meat afterwards, like where does it go? What happens in the second act? How does it end? And just... And finding ways to connect him with the people who live in the village. And it was also supposed to be set in Cyprus, so trying to include that as a character. So sometimes a really great premise can be kind of your worst enemy as well. Because you need to, the rest of the film needs to match,
So in terms of casting, you've already mentioned his name. How important was it getting Harry Connick Jr. to play the sort of the leading man role, I suppose, of your rom-com?
Well, very important. I mean, so this was always supposed to be, a crowd pleaser, a more commercial film. We tend to do more art house in Cyprus, which is great, and they have great festival runs, but they don't get major distribution. And just over the years, I've learned that nowadays, especially, and from talking to other filmmakers who are a little bit more established, commercial film gets made for two reasons: either IP, like strong IP, or a well-known actor.
Yeah.
You really do need one or the other, unless you've made something that is so brilliant that it surpasses both of those. So I knew we would definitely need somebody strong to carry the film. And when he evolved into a musician, Harry just became this obvious choice because he's this amazing actor, but first and foremost, he's this super talented musician who writes and performs songs. So, and it was also kind of fun because he was playing against type, as opposed to jazz. He's doing rock now with the tattoos and everything. So yeah, it was very important. I mean, I'd made my first feature film over 10 years ago, Committed, which was lovely, this lovely little road trip movie. And when I had sent it out to sales agents, I kept getting very similar comments. We love the film, but this is difficult to market, or it's difficult to sell because you don't have any, recognizable names.
Yeah.
So it just became a kind of a lesson for me.
And in that sense, then, so at what stage do you contact Harry? Have you got your script finished and you're sending it out to say, look, this is the film I want to make. Would you like to be in it?
Yes, 100%. The script has to be as ready as it can be because you only get one shot at, sending it out to people like that. Ideally, you want a casting director on board, which we had. We were lucky to have. So we had some funding from the Deputy Ministry of Culture here in Cyprus.
Okay.
They were supporting the film, which allowed us to get a casting director on board because then there's better access to talent like that. And the other key factor, so I should mention, obviously, I had two really amazing producers on board from the US, Keith Arnold, and then later on Steve Shapiro.
Mm-hmm.
And Keith encouraged me to write a really personal letter to Harry explaining why I thought he'd be great for the role and what it was about Cyprus that was special. And and Harry did mention afterwards that the letter was a kind of a key selling point that, he loved the script, but there was something about the letter that really
that's fantastic.
Really helped.
I mean, that's encouraging because you hear that. I've heard that before. People encouraged to do it, and you're never quite sure whether it can or will make a difference. But it's great to hear that personal touch can.
No. So you have to brush up on your letter writing skills as well as your screenwriting skills. It's super, super important. Yeah.
So once he's involved, then does he have any notes? Does he have ideas about the script? Was there things that developed on from once he got involved?
Yeah. So, but not. So, I mean, again, and I'm not gushing or anything, but I can't say enough good things about Harry. We did once he was on board and once the film was greenlit, we would sit and do like a whole script analysis and go through the character. I don't like to over rehearse, but I like to go through everything so that there aren't any questions like, oh, what's his motivation or why did he do that? So we clear everything up. And that it's at that point that, and I try not to be precious about like my dialogue and stuff. It has to fit on the actor.
Yeah.
So that's the nice thing. So we just go through the whole thing. We kind of do a read through, just the two of us. And then, he might have questions or there might be things that I didn't notice. And then, and we adjust. I mean, there are also there's a very good example of how something written down, there was a joke, the sound of a word that really worked well in writing, but when you said it out loud, it didn't really make sense. And even though, I sometimes read out loud to myself, I never notice. And Harry's like, I don't understand how this joke works. And I was like, oh my God, like, how did I miss that? So that's why it's so collaborative. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So when you're on set and you're shooting the movie, you're talking to, is it Stefan Metzner?
Stefan Metzner, yes, my wonderful DP.
You're a wonderful DP. So what was the conversation like with him about the look and feel that you wanted to get for your movie?
Right. So, the great thing is Stefan and I have worked together on almost all of my films, shorts and my first feature.
Okay.
So we have a really great shorthand with each other, and he's really calm and wonderful to work with. He keeps me very calm. So I do. I am super OCD prepared before I step on set so that I can be calm and let the sort of magic happen once we're there. But I definitely gave him some, film references. I think we were looking at films back then like Lost in Translation and The Descendants, kind of also thematically and, aesthetically, the island theme in some cases, the fish out of water idea. But what I do is I have always got an extensive shot list, and then Stefan and I literally go to every single location, or if there isn't a location, we meet up somewhere similar. and we storyboard the whole film just with photos. And he's got obviously the app with the lens and so on. And we plan out every single shot of the film.
Okay.
And we don't necessarily stick to it exactly as is, but we have this great blueprint. I arrive on set, I have my magic file, and it's all just there. So we've already done all the thinking and arguing and whatever about the technical, the composition shots and things. So once we're on set, we don't have to think about any of that. And we know what our shots are. And then if something comes up or there's a better idea or whatever, then we have the time and clarity to do it. So it's very laborious beforehand, but I'm so lucky to have somebody who's into it, And I mean, our cliff location is like 2.5 hours away from where we live, from Nicosia. And he was happy to jump in the car and we'd talk about the film all the way there and back and do our photos.
But I guess the benefit there, though, is to do with time and money, because if you spent that time when you're during the shoot, that'd be costing a fortune, wouldn't it, to make those decisions?
Yeah, and you have no time on an independent film. Every day, it was just such a race to get to wrap, to get all your shots in. So if we didn't have that level of preparation, we definitely would have had to sacrifice a lot more shots than what we did. And you still end up sacrificing some things.
Indeed. So when you're on the shoot, then tell us a little story then from the shoot that only someone that was part of the shoot would know about, that is a fond memory you have from the film.
Oh gosh. Oh, fond memory. Okay, good. Yeah, because we had lots of different things happening on the shoot. Well, I'll tell you just something very cute was, so Harry has an incredible sense of humor, which I don't know if people can tell. He's done lots of comedy in the past, but he kept doing a bit in between takes. So our cliff was over this beautiful beach location, and it's environmentally protected. We never went down to the beach, but we had to leave by a certain date because we have sea turtles that come and lay their eggs on the beach, every mid-May. So we had a very specific date, to be out of there and to not disturb, the environment. So Harry kept doing a bit like a nature ranger or something in between takes, to camera, and I can't imitate it to save my life. It's just about the turtles and so on. Because there's a scene where he throws a hammer over the cliff. I mean, it lands in the water, and he kept joking about that, how that can't be a good thing for the turtles and so on. They weren't there yet. So, but yeah, so there was just a lot of fun like that. One of the more dramatic things that happened was, because this was during COVID, we shot in 2022, that we were super strict with making sure we had, our masks on, indoors, outdoors, 3 tests a week, very strict protocols. And then on day 3, Harry tested positive. So the one person that we just couldn't afford to, and he had no symptoms, he was perfectly fine, but he still had to quarantine. So we had to pack up shop and drive all the way to Nicosia, where we were doing some of the village scenes, to maybe shoot the 3 scenes that he wasn't in, just to save time, and then drive all the way back again. So that was one of the more stressful moments of the shoot. But we got by. After that, it was pretty smooth sailing.
So when you get everything in the can, it's down to post-production, and then you're in a room with Emilios Avram, is it?
Yes, Emilio Avram, who's our editor.
Your editor. So in terms of what you discovered writing it, and then discussions with the talent you were working with on screen, then so what about the story did you uncover during the edit that wasn't obvious when you were writing it?
So there were quite a few things. There were 2 very specific incidents, and I'll do this without spoilers. But there's something in the very beginning of the film which obviously introduces us to this notorious suicide hotspot. And I had the character being, like I said, very misanthropic, very grouchy. But when we edited together, it came across as really aggressive. And I just thought to myself, what was I thinking? I can't do a romantic comedy like this. And we had to get very creative about cutting it in a way that wouldn't make our character super unlikable and cruel. It was just this huge shock, and then suddenly you realize, oh my God, I might not have all the footage I need. But we managed with multiple edits to fix the opening of our film. And then there was another incident where, sort of towards the end of the film, I won't give away, it's my favorite scene. It involved Harry sings in Greek at one point in the film.
Oh, amazing!
But it's this, I won't give more away. But it was this really beautiful. It's just an amazing scene, and it ends up being a tearjerker for some reason as well, with some audiences that have seen it. We've tested it, but it wasn't working the way it had been written and filmed. and I can't say now, but we had to cheat certain shots to kind of change the storyline of how that scene played out. And yeah, it sounds cryptic now, but yeah, maybe once the film is out, I can go in more detail.
Indeed.
But for sure, yeah, editing, you retell the story again, yeah, with the edit.
Indeed. Well, look, thank you for sharing those stories about the making of the film. Do you want to remind people then when and how can they see Find Me Falling?
So it's on the 19th of July on Netflix worldwide. In Cyprus, we'll have a theatrical release as well on the same day. So anybody wants to see it on the big screen can come to Cyprus. But otherwise, yeah, Netflix all over on the 19th.
Right then, Stelana, thank you very much for telling us all about your film. We're now going to move into the second portion of the podcast, the 3 films that have impacted everything in your adult life. You've given me 3 titles. I've got them in front of me here. I've got a clock that will go off with DEFCON 1 every time 5 minutes are up. For those that haven't heard the show before, that we get 5 minutes per film. When the alarm goes off, we stop, finish our sentences, and we move on to the next one. That all seem good to you, Stelana?
Yes. I'm ready.
Brilliant. Okay. The clock is ticking, and the first film on your list of 3 films that have impacted everything in your adult life is 1972's Godfather. Do you want to talk about where that fits in with your movie watching life?
Yes, sure. I mean, it is my all-time favorite film as well.
Okay.
So I saw that as a teenager, actually, when I was starting to really get into film and discover cinema. And again, I was a teenager in South Africa, back in the video and DVD days.
Yeah.
And it wasn't always easy to find, foreign films and so on. So I had discovered this great little store called Gaslight, actually, and I could find older movies and things like that. Godfather you could get, though. And I think the first time I tried to watch it, because I was like, what is this Godfather? As a teenager, I didn't know anything, and I wasn't really paying attention. And if you don't pay attention, you can easily lose interest. And I kind of stopped watching it halfway through, to my shame. And then I gave it a second go, like a couple of months later, and I watched it. And I just remember the feeling at the very end of the film where the door closes on Kay and just getting goosebumps everywhere and just thinking, oh my God. And that has always stayed with me, and I've watched it a million times since. It's the line that sealed the deal for my husband when we first met, and I asked him what he did for a living. He said to me, "You can ask me this one time about my affairs." He kind of quoted, and I just thought, oh my God, he quoted The Godfather. I have to marry him. So it has definitely had an impact on my life. I think it's genius.
So you watched it on VHS? Yeah. You watched it on VHS the first time, you say?
Yeah, it would have been VHS.
Was it one tape or 2? Would it be in a 3-hour movie?
Oh yeah, it might have been 2. Or no, you could get 3-hour VHS, 180 minutes. I think, yeah. It was 1. And it was one of the first DVD sets that I bought when I moved to London at the HMV. It's just something that has always followed. One of the first movie posters I had up in my room. Because I was at that point, I knew I wanted to be a filmmaker, and I was just looking for inspiration.
What was it then about that second viewing that you saw that you don't think you saw the first time?
I wasn't paying attention, because there are a lot of names and details, so who the traitors are and so on. If you're not listening and you're not following the characters, it's because it's quite complex, like all the families and who's betraying who and so on. And if you're not paying attention, then you're missing all that brilliant, intrigue, and you need to be watching it. And the second time, I mean, for me, aside from the great story and the characters and everything, I love how visual it was. Like one of my favorite shots in the film is when Michael goes to visit his father and all the security is gone, and he realizes that they're going to come and try to kill him. And he takes the florist from outside to stand at the entrance, kind of to keep the bad guys away. Yeah. And they manage to do it. And at the end of that, they light up a cigarette. And there's just a close-up of their hands where Michael has steady hands and the florist is shaking. And it's just, that's the whole story. And it tells you everything about the characters. And it has always stayed with me. And I actually have a bit of a thing with hand motifs myself now when I film. It's just if I can tell stories like that where you're telling everything about a character with one little shot like that, to me, that's just brilliant. And all the clever little symbolism things, the door with the fishes when Luca Brasi is killed, the sleeping with the fishes thing, the symbolism. You can watch that movie again and again, and every time you discover something new. And I love the whole history and like legend and lore behind it. I had read the book, and obviously I'd read Easy Riders, Raging Bulls, which I think every filmmaker should read about that era, of...
I've not read the book. I've read Easy Rider, but I've not read the book. How does it compare? How does Godfather compare to the book? Where...
Oh, it's great. The book is a little bit of both. It's a little bit of Godfather 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
And it's great. And it just has, the film is very true to the book. The book is just great because it has a few extra details that then just enrich the film. For example, when he meets Apollonia in Sicily, there's a scene where he's walking with her with a whole family following behind, and she trips at one point and he sort of catches her. And in the book, there's a line that says, her mother is watching and she kind of smirks to herself because Apollonia is like a mountain goat. She's been walking these hills forever. She's never tripped a day in her life. So it's this deliberate thing to get him to sort of touch her. And like, that's great because you see that in the film, but you don't, you get this extra backstory from the book. And then I don't know if you saw, there was the series The Offer that came out, which was all about the making of the film, and it was produced by the same producer.
Yeah.
And that was just a gift to see how that was done.
Well, look, the first 5 minutes are up.
Oh wow, I could have gone on forever on that one. Okay.
All right, then we're moving swiftly along.
Yes.
The second choice in your list of three is 1997's Life is Beautiful, the film that attempted to draw humor out of the Holocaust, which
yes, I know, it was controversial.
At the time. So do you want to tell us?
I mean, again, I saw that. I think I was 18 or how old was I? Maybe a little bit younger when I watched that. And I do have a thing for Italian cinema now that I think of a lot of my films that I like. I mean, I watched that in all kind of like innocence, again, as in my late teens, Roberto Benigni. And I always remember the line when it was introduced at the Oscars, I think by Sophia Loren. She said something along the lines of, he makes us laugh while our hearts are crying. And I thought it was brilliant how he could move us. For the first half of the film is just all beautiful and love and romance. And then obviously the second half, he wasn't trying to get us to laugh. He had so many powerful messages in that film about family and love and sacrifice. I thought it was, and humanity. I mean, for me, it was genius, and it was a mirror. The first half to the second half of the film, and it was, as a filmmaker, it was such a big lesson in terms of plant and payoff. How he set so many things up in the first half of the film, and then he kind of played them off again in the second. And again, that has always stayed with me with everything I write. It was just so clever how everything came together, from tiny little things like the music, the opera they go to that he plays for her over the loudspeaker, in the concentration camp. I mean, that's a very obvious example, but there were so many little details that he used. I just thought it was brilliant writing and so much heart. And I mean, it destroyed me in the end. I was heartbroken. And I think for weeks afterwards, every time I just heard a cue from the music, I would start tearing up because it was profoundly sad. I mean, and obviously it's not a far stretch to be heartbroken and horrified and terribly, sad about the Holocaust. But yeah, he just presented it in a very, very humane way. I thought it was told from just a very specific perspective. I mean, all the movies are very powerful, but that had something extra for me.
And what in particular, in terms of that, in that idea of it being a wonderful, as from a writing point of view, being something that has so many setups that have so amazing payoffs. What are a couple that stand out for you that in terms of for people who might, if they go back to it?
Yeah. So like just everything. He had the little riddles that he kept doing with the doctor, and then he runs into the doctor again, in the concentration camp, like the like the plant and payoff, the relationship there. I'm trying to think, like just all the little games that they played, showing like the son who liked to hide and how he uses that again, and they're just the way they set up his character so well. I mean, I'm being a little bit vague. It's been a while since I've seen it, but I remember that was just something that stood out to me. And if you watch it again, you will see a constant setup and payoff, like from the first half to the second half of the film. Or even, the very simple example was the way he wins over his wife in the beginning because of the kind of the magical thing of he takes her through the town the one night. The way he knows that the key is going to fall into his hands at a certain time of day because he knows that happens every day, and he makes her think that this is kind of something magical. And I don't know if you remember, but there was just a lovely payoff of the routine of the day and how he used it to his advantage to charm his future wife.
Yeah,
you have to see the film to see, but it was just, and it seems very simple now, but I think it was kind of masterful, and I try to use those details and to enrich my own scripts.
Did you see the film before or after the sort of the controversy that was, the sort of
before? I mean, again, there was no social media and stuff back then. I saw it in South Africa in the cinema. And like much later realized that there was and I loved the film, and then much later realized how upset people got over, which, and I think he was condemning the Holocaust.
Of course,
He was not trying to make a joke out of it. Quite the opposite. Like,
it's not. I mean, obviously there was humor, but in a way that the book "The Man's Search for Meaning," which is the idea of the rules of the world during a Holocaust and the rules of the world when there's not one are not the same. People are not bound by the same rules, unfortunately, and that's kind of.
And how do you shield a child from something so horrific? Because
right then. Thank you for that discussion on Life is Beautiful. Third film on your list, final choice. We're going to go back to 1953 for Roman Holiday, a film directed by William Wyler, who would then go on to direct Ben-Hur. An absolute behemoth of a movie. So. A very different movie in Roman Holiday. So do you want to talk about how this captured your heart?
Yes. Well, I just realized these were all a very similar period, but I guess it was the start of like filmmaking and adulthood. And it was one of those little gems that I found in the little Gaslight video store. It was very hard to choose just three films, but I was like, I definitely have to. I'm a RomCom diehard fan, and it's an endless list, but I just kind of went back to the beginning. I love Roman Holiday. I'm a huge Audrey Hepburn fan. I think it was her first film, and she also got an Oscar for it. It's just a perfect example of, beautiful location, gorgeous characters, amazing chemistry, and also just lovely humor. And for me, I don't know what this says about me, but I think some of the greatest love stories, and I don't want to. This is a spoiler alert, so if somebody hasn't seen,
no, don't worry. But I think we can spoil a 1953 film.
Yeah, so I guess for me, some of the greatest love stories are the ones that where the protagonists don't end up together. Because if you really think about it, Gone with the Wind, Casablanca, Titanic, and Roman Holiday is one of them. But this one is not. It's kind of beautifully tragic in that they realize they cannot be together. She's a princess, he's a journalist, and I love the idea of sacrifice. It's a theme that often comes up in my own films, like how far would you go for love or for someone that you love, and he basically gives up this huge story that's going to help him and getting back home to America in order to protect her. And it's amazing, and it's a great little moment. No words are spoken when she meets him at the very end of the film, with the where she meets the press, and they say everything with just kind of one look, and they part ways, and that they'll never see each other again, even though they were just such a beautiful combination. And it's heartbreaking but beautiful. And then of course the rest of the film is just really fun to watch. It's Rome, and it's this rebellious princess and this hilarious sidekick photographer character, and it's just one of those awesome feel-good films that I aspire and hope to replicate in my own career.
I mean, it's a 1953 film, but what makes it still feel very much alive in 2024?
Yeah, it still stands. I personally don't think it's aged at all. And I always wonder if they'll do some kind of remake. I was like, maybe it's not as possible like modern day, but I think it's really great dialogue still. I mean, Audrey Hepburn and Gregory Peck, like, they don't make them like that anymore, is definitely the line that I associate with the two of them. And it's got a great pace. It's a nice premise. It's constantly engaging. You know, it's got the classic things that you like to see in rom-coms, like the touristy bits, the famous mouth of truth. I don't think anybody would know where that is in Rome if it wasn't for this film. I went and saw that specifically because of the film, which is also an unplanned scene. That was if you see the film, she really that was just kind of a joke that he played on her, that his hand had been chopped off. So her reaction is completely genuine when you watch the film, where she's freaking out that his hand has been cut. So yeah, just lovely tidbits like that. There's just a great chemistry and quality to the film that still stands today for me.
Yeah, I mean, and it obviously it harks back to an age of the movie star, doesn't it? You know, there's no getting away from Gregory Peck as movie, and even though it's Hepburn's first movie, she still delights on the screen.
She was beautiful, and Gregory. I mean, yeah, maybe. He was amazing, and it was a lovely character that he played as well. So, yeah, it's just a very charming, endearing film, but it's got, and it has a lot of depth to it, and yes, and it's one of those rare rom-coms where they don't end up together.
Do you see any influence, any lineage from this film to your new film? Is there any way that you think you consciously or subconsciously?
Without giving things away, I definitely. I think in my films, I always have a lot of, like, the theme of sacrifice is very big, obligation and family. That features always in my films. It definitely featured in my first film.
Finish your
Committed.
sentence.
Yeah. Just saying, definitely featured in my first film, Committed, the idea of unrequited love. Again, without doing any spoilers, but yeah, definitely has influenced me for sure.
Brilliant. Well, look, that's our 5 minutes up. That's all three films: The Godfather, Life is Beautiful, and Roman Holiday. Thank you very much for sharing how those films impacted on you, and thank you for sharing the story of how you made Find Me Falling. Good luck with the release in July when it comes out on Netflix. And it just gives me to say thank you very much for giving me your time on the Britflicks podcast.
It was amazing being here. Thank you, Stuart.